Hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar. So I hope everyone's keeping safe and well in these strange and difficult times. So today I want to present to you how 3D structured light is used in the aerospace industry. So firstly, I'd like to introduce the presenters and also talk a little bit about who GOM are. Okay. So, as an introduction, my name's Scott Cattell and I work for a company called GOM UK. So alongside working with GOM, I'm also a volunteer at the IMechE. So I'm education representative for the IMechE's Birmingham Young Members Panel. So my main duties include enthusing young engineers to be a part of the IMechE by helping out with events, hosting online and face-to-face sessions as well. So just as a quick introduction to each of us, so on the left, that's myself. So I'm applications development and support at GOM UK. I've got over 5 years working in metrology, and 3 of which have been at GOM. Next is Lee Griffiths, who's a colleague of mine. So although Lee operates out of the UK, Lee's actually a global role developing the business for aerospace and power generation. So Lee spent the majority of his career at Rolls-Royce. So working on the metrology, but also developing as an apprentice with the aerospace division. And then he's also been working at GOM for the same amount of time as myself. And then on the right as well are a customer of GOM's, but they're actually a service provider. So they complete bureau work. So this is Dan Laitchbury, and he's engineering manager for Physical Digital. So Dan's also very experienced within metrology. He's a chartered engineer with the Institute of Measurement Control, and he's spent the majority of his working metrology career at Physical Digital. Okay, so starting off, who are GOM and what do they do? So GOM are a German company that develop, produce and distribute sensors, but they've also got a larger portfolio as well. So the picture on the top left is representing the software that we sell. So we sell the scanning software, but also incorporated within that is the inspection software as well. On the top right are our automated systems. On the bottom left is what we'll talk about predominantly today. So these are the 3D structured light systems or the 3D scanners that we sell. And on the bottom right is the Aramis, which is a 3D testing. So we do 3D deformation checks with these as well. Okay, so as previously mentioned, the main hub or the headquarters is in Braunschweig in Germany, which is about 150 miles from Berlin. But then we've also got Charlotte in North Carolina, which is the main American hub, and Shanghai in China as well, which is the main Asian hub. So with this, we're able to actually produce a 24/7 support network as well. Okay, so we're a globally renowned company. So we also, along with the 3 main hubs, we've got subsidiary companies as well, such as GOM UK, and then we've also got partner companies. So you can see on the map there, we're in all of the different areas of the globe. So we're able to provide that local support that our customers require to get the most out of our systems. So recently, roughly between a year and 18 months ago, we were acquired by Zeiss. So we've actually become part of the Zeiss group now, and from that we've become part of the industrial quality and research sector. So Zeiss are a humongous company, so they're most well known for producing camera lenses, so just general photography lenses, also the lenses in optical glasses as well. So we've now actually combined portfolios with Zeiss. So this is basically to meet the demand of customer requirements. So within that, we've now got tactile, CT, and form and surface alongside dimensional metrology as well. So within GOM, I'm going to primarily focus today on the aerospace industry, but GOM as a company provides systems into many other sectors as well. So some of these include automotive industry, which is very large in Europe and Asia. consumer goods, which is predominantly in Asia, and then research in universities as well. So this is the other side of the business that we've got that tests materials. So we're always tracking 3D deformation, and this is what the research and universities are particularly interested in. Okay, so now we're going to actually talk a little bit about the technology and how it works. So it's just worth mentioning at this point as well that we've got a chat box available, and I'll answer any questions at the end, just not to disrupt the flow of the slides here. So by all means, put your questions in as they come into your head, and we'll answer these at the end. Okay, so the principles of digital image processing. So how do we take from the scan and create a model inside our software we can actually interpret and extract dimensional information from to check whether this part is conforming to the standards and the inspection laid out, or whether it requires rework, or whether we need to put it in the scrap bin. So the first thing is we can see on the screen now is our Atos core sensor. So with our sensors, we've got a projection lens, which is in the middle, and then you've got two cameras either side of that projector as well. So we shoot these images, or we take these images in grayscale. So this is, we typically know this as black and white imagery, as you can see on the screen here. Some of the keywords that we'll be talking about are on the screen now. So this is pixels, resolution, grayscale that we've just come into, and also color depth as well. So pixels may be fairly well known to some of you, but some of the others may be a slightly new topic. So we'll just go over these in some detail now. Okay, so we take these images in grayscale, and then we've also got a certain amount of pixels, or this is the resolution. So how many pixels have we got in this image? So this is vital to actually extracting information from the part. So if we look at the blown up image here, we can actually see the individual pixels. So what a pixel is just a square. So images are made up of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these little pixels here, and we're able to, when we blow this up, you might be able to see that the image on the right, the blown up image, looks like it's consisting of a load of different squares. So then when we go down to an even deeper level on here, what we've got are all these different squares in white and black and grey. So what do we do with this information when we first take the image? So what we do here is actually assign numbers. So 0 being the most dark and 256 being the most bright, or 255, I should say. So from this, then we're able to understand where are the light areas and where are the dark areas. So why is this important to know? This is important primarily in our case to understand reference points. So what reference points are is giving us the ability to understand where we are within the 3D space. So 3D space is when we take an image or we take a scan and we move, let's say, 10 millimeters to the left, our scanner. How do we know that we've actually moved 10 millimeters to the left? We do this via reference points. So you can see on the screen there, the image of the reference point is black and white. And we need to understand where the midpoint of that reference point is. So, so this is why we use black and white, is because they're the most contrasting colours. So again, here what we're trying to do is to find the ellipse and find the midpoint. So we do this by a load of different rays, and we can go on here to, let's just look at this one individual ray on the right. And we can see there that from that ray on the right, we start at this nice white colour, and then we start to go to a darker grey, and then all the way to black. Underneath, the graph shows this big change in the grayscale number, or the bit number that we applied. So when that rate of change of contrasting between the white and black as a certain value, so the rate of change is increased, we're able to actually, from a sub-pixel level, understand exactly where that contrast takes place. So the joke was on me, really, when I said to my maths teacher, you know, when am I ever going to use differentiation in real life? This has proved me wrong, because this is exactly how we do it. Okay, so from this information here, we're able to then construct this over all these different rays. We can then form the ellipse, and from that, we then get the center point of that reference point. We do this with numerous amounts of reference points that are either on the part or on a fixture, and then from here we're able to triangulate the distances between the reference points, and then we can maneuver the sensor around it, and providing that we can see the reference points, we always know to a very, very accurate degree as to where we are in 3D space. So once we know where we are in 3D space, the next challenge is to actually scan the part. So how we do this is we shoot 3D structured light or a fringe projection onto the part. So this is where we differ. So there's two types of 3D scanners. We've got so we've got laser based, which will shoot lasers, and then we've also got 3D structured light. So structured light is actually shooting a known fringe projection onto a part. So if we were to shoot this onto a flat surface, we would know exactly where we expect to see those fringes, as you can see moving on the screen now. And then based on whatever geometry is put in front of it, when we understand that the fringes are distorted in some way, the two cameras can actually go and pick up where the phase pattern is distorted, and then we're able to generate scan information from that. Okay, so hopefully that hasn't rattled the brain too much, and now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Lee Griffiths, who's going to talk about how we use GOM inside aerospace. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, so welcome from me. I'm going to reflect a little bit on GOM and its role in aerospace and the aerospace industry. I think to do that, good to kind of see where we've come from. And I wonder how many on the call perhaps can recall the image on the left. So this is what I would call a very traditional approach to measurement and inspection. Pioneer Mr. Frank, or Sir Frank Whittle there on the left-hand side, using some very traditional gauging and so on. And over the years, this has developed somewhat to be in a more automated, coordinate-based techniques, much like you see on the right. So this is like a tactile method for identifying where the products are in 3D space, building this together and creating an inspection. What we found with the advent of CAD CAM systems, the more complexity that are being built into design, particularly freeform surfaces, things like additive, where really you're only limited by your imagination in terms of the design, is the need for a metrology system to support this, and that becomes the advent of a scanning system like our ATOS systems, which you see in front of you on the screen. So this looping video shows one of our scanners, the black unit on the top, projecting the blue light as Scott's just described, being operated by a robot. So this is, let's say, equivalent to what you would do for a CMM. This is our level of automation. So the ATOS systems are some 20 years or more now in development, and we have quite a specialist team within GOM that do focus on aerospace. And building on the success of our previous generation sensors, we've launched a dedicated sensor for this industry. We've even named it appropriately, the ATOS 5 for airfoil. So this is what you saw in the previous video. It's what you see on screen. And it's been designed and built specifically for this industry. We've optimized the setup, the lenses, the angles to suit geometries like turbine blades, nozzle guide vanes, bliss, and fan blades. So we've put all of our experience in over the years in order to meet the needs of the industry. So the needs are the resolution. So as the geometries get more challenging, the the characteristics like edge sizes are getting smaller and smaller. The need to be quicker is also a big demand and a big challenge for the industry. So in terms of the capability, let's say, of this particular setup, you could measure something like an edge size of around 60 microns, and from a metrology point of view, use around 20 points to create that radius. Okay, in metrology terms, that's pretty good. So for these reasons, these are the reasons that the industry is moving more towards structured light. The data acquisition, the speed by which that we gather data and we can measure and we can inspect is often extremely quick. And compared with traditional techniques, whether this is manual gauging or coordinate-based systems, these can be in around half of the original time. The other detail is really we're not limited by sectional data, which is quite traditional way of inspecting. So sections are essentially taking a slice or a line through the part. You've essentially got a digital twin. It's a 3D replica in the virtual world of the product that you are measuring. So this gives no end of advantages that Daniel from Physical Digital will touch on in a second. So these are the primary reasons that we use this technology, why we see it being taken more by the industry, because it becomes a tool that really starts to enable productivity, efficiency, and really moves towards this Industry 4 mentality. Today, we talk a lot about the engine components, such as turbine blades, bliss, fan blades, but this is not the limit for aerospace for us. We have many applications in aircraft, in space, whether this is inside the vehicles or outside of the vehicles, helicopters, and also into emerging technologies like urban air mobility, so UAVs, which are becoming a driving force for the technology. So I'm going to pass now to Daniel from Physical Digital, and he will give you some use case examples.
Yes, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Scott, for the introduction. So, hello, my name is Daniel Aintreby. I work for Physical Digital. We're based in Guildford. I've worked with the GOM systems and other metrology systems for around about 9 years now, and we're actually the largest service provider in the UK offering GOM as a service, both operating mobile manual systems, and we also have a fully automated inspection cell with an Atos 16 megapixel sensor. We were the first company in the world last year to gain an accreditation called NADCAP AC7130, which enables us to carry out inspection of aerospace parts in the same way as a traditional CMM. We're also recently gone through an acquisition by a company called Trescal, who are one of the world's largest calibration companies. And I think this, coupled with the purchase of GOM by Zeiss, is a clear indication that the aerospace industry is going towards investing into optical scanning systems. So I want to talk about a few applications that we've been involved in over the years. And first of all, kind of the range that you can get out of a GOM 3D scanner. So typical applications would range from 5 to 30 meters, we'd classify as a large object. And this can include full aircraft scanning for digital archiving, inspection, or reverse engineering of parts or full aircraft for CFD models or modifications. And the reason the GOM system is particularly good for large objects is we have the ability to use it with the integrated photogrammetry system, which kind of gives us a comparable global accuracy to a laser tracker network, but with the addition of having a huge number of more reference points, either to take measurements to or to use for aligning scan data when used in a combination with the 3D scanning system. So we also do sort of medium-sized objects that we would categorise between 1 and 5 meters, and this may include a rotor. So this particular example here is a 12-stage rotor that had over 800 blades, and these are all measured on a manual system. All shaft diameters were captured, and this took around about 6 hours. So you can see you can capture a huge amount of data, even using a manual system in a very short time. But we don't just measure large and medium, and actually a lot of the real value can be seen in the small object size. So this is where we come on to kind of the turbine blades and things. So I didn't want to show a trailing edge with no context or talk about resolution in microns. I wanted to give an example that everybody could relate to. So this is a fingerprint in a piece of clay that's scanned using a GOM system. And you can really kind of appreciate the level of detail that you can capture in defining that surface fully. So just if anyone who works on CMMs, you know, I challenge you to get anywhere near that and kind of calculate a time to measure that. The other thing is this is actually scanned on a system at 100 millimeters. The resolution can be increased by 3 times this if you get a specific system, especially for small parts. So as Lee's already discussed, we obviously measure a range of parts, so typically blisks, discs, nozzles and blades, and the blisk would typically take around 2 hours to measure, full surface geometry, aerofoils and machine surfaces. Discs around 1 hour and 12 minutes, vanes around about 17 minutes, and then blades down to 7 minutes. So I think the one thing to notice here, these are kind of average times, and also they are based on the system that we currently have set up. But since the release of the new Atos 5 sensor, these times would probably be halved. So it really does offer a production solution for measurement. So being a service provider, our measurement and inspection will fall into 2 main categories really. So we do low volume and high volume. The first being low volume, so this could be 1 part to 100, but tends to be one-off projects to help customers with measurement capacity or specific investigation to get areas that weren't necessarily captured on a standard CMM program. So for all of these jobs, or mostly optical markers can either be applied direct to the surface, as Scott has said, or we can design some sort of fixture in. So for the small batch stuff, we have a combination of a modular fixture and sifter system and an in-house 3D printing to make bespoke fixtures to hold parts. So the advantage of the reference points, and again Scott has touched on this, but it enables us to have a direct link of traceability back to world standards because the scale bars can go and be calibrated in a DAX accredited lab. The photogrammetry system then is also used to cross-check calibration between the sensor, so from a process safety point of view, and also monitoring of environmental conditions such as lighting change. So it really does give a really stable system when used in combination with the scanner. The other advantage that we have from a small batch point of view is we have access to a virtual measuring room. So we're able to actually create all the measuring positions offline and have a digital twin of the robot before parts even arrive on site. So it's really a powerful tool for doing small projects and quick turnarounds. And then for these kind of projects, we would carry out some level of measurement system analysis and would typically be driven by the customer. So the beauty of scanning is also we can capture the full surface of the object. And the image here on the top right just shows the range that we could typically achieve on a repeat study of a nozzle. So we're looking at around about 1 to 5 microns if we carry out a 10 dynamic repeatability study in with reference points onto the part. This project, from initial delivery from purchase order and customer parts to fixture, design and manufacture, to create the programs, carry out the repeatability study and actually measure 30 custom parts, the total project length was 2 days. So you can see it's a really powerful tool for carrying out inspection work in a short time frame. On the color map, you can see there's red areas on the vane. So I just thought I'd point out here, these are actually the areas that exist under the reference points when they're applied to the surface. And obviously in production, it's not ideal to have to put points on, take them off, and risk having information under there that's incorrect. So that kind of leads us on to the second part of the measurement we complete, which is then the higher batch sizes. So where we're looking at sort of 100 plus parts, we would typically go down the route of optimizing the process to save time, and that may be where maybe with the specific one part fixturing, which you can see on the left and right, or if parts need scanning in batches or there is a large number and it allows, we can also create multi-part fixtures. So the advantage of this is we obviously speed up the process of measurement. We have the ability to remove the reference points and place them externally to the object, so we're actually capturing the full surface, and to reuse photogrammetry's measurements, so we're again saving time in the measurement cycle. So a typical example of a production measurement, so this is a single blade fixture. We would look at using a repeat photogrammetry, and then we can kind of put the time down for a small compressor blade for around about 2 minutes with a 10 times dynamic repeatability study of around about 3 microns. So compared to CMM, again, it depends what you're inspecting, but we're looking sort of 50 to 80% faster, plus the advantage of full surface deviation. You can have the added benefit of full first article on every part if you wish. And then also the retrospective inspection of areas that weren't necessarily included in the original requirements. So no product recalls, no resetting up on the CMM to get that information. It already exists within the projects that you've captured. So once you've captured all this great 3D data, so what can you do with it? So first of all, we're looking at inspection. So we, as a company, have no direct affiliation to GOM, and we review competition and both hardware and software. But the reason we feel that GOM is so powerful is for a number of reasons. So we've got the ability to maintain full traceability from measurement to results. So that goes from the calibration of the sensor, the artifacts, the scale bars back to world standards, the fully parametric link between the measurements and the results, which obviously is fundamental for aerospace, and it just keeping that unbroken chain of custody, which you can't get if you then start extracting measurement data out of a capture program, importing it into a separate inspection program. You've lost that kind of direct parametric traceability. We have the ability to inspect measurements from other systems, so we can use CMM data, CT data, laser scanners, and compile it all within one project. So really good for doing correlation exercises, or if you have measurements from different systems for a single part. And this is the power of what you can actually do once you've got the data in there. You can replicate anything you can on the CMM, you can replicate anything you can measure by hand, and also there's lots of tools that we can do a lot more measurements that can't be done using other methods. The other benefit we found as a business is just the fact there's no additional licenses for different modules. So if you want to do an aerofoil inspection, they don't charge you for an aerofoil license. It's included in the software. Likewise with trend and batch analysis, and also with scripting. So it's really good being able to manage licenses within the business as well. And they also offer a free version of the software called GOM Inspect, which has the same functionality as the main project, but is accessible by all stakeholders. And to be able to deliver results to customers and in a graphical way rather than reams and reams of CMM results or tables is a really powerful tool when you're trying to get results across. So along with providing measurement and inspection, we also carry out a vast amount of reverse engineering. So I wanted to touch on a few tools where 3D data and the GOM software really help with the process of doing that. So to start with, I just want to quickly differentiate between two types of reverse engineering and where we differ, and where the aerospace industry differs as well. So firstly, the example you see on the screen. So we've got a 3D scan of the part. We create a really nice CAD model. We show a color map deviation that's showing almost zero deviation. Maybe create some drawings, maybe create some model, maybe manufacture the part. So this is probably acceptable in some applications and looks great for marketing, but actually there's a few underlying questions that everyone should be asking. You know, if you see this or you're looking at doing reverse engineering. So, you know, is the part that was measured first correct? Obviously not, because it's been manufactured and it'll have some inbuilt variation. What's the history of the part? What about the interfacing parts? You know, how is it manufactured? What's the measurement system accuracy and uncertainties? Has the CAD model been produced how the designer originally intended? So there's a huge amount of questions that actually go into the background, and really creating a copy of what you've scanned is not truly reverse engineering in most instances. And if you don't see any deviations on the color map, then you probably should be asking questions about why not. So one of the main advantages within the GOM and 3D scanning is just the density of data it captures. So having that huge resolution opens up a lot of options when you're doing inspection and reverse engineering as well. So Typically on a small face example like this, which is roughly about 6 mil by 25, we're capturing 250 points. So if you compare that to a CMM, if you're capturing 3 points or 10 or 20 or 50, yes, these are phenomenally accurate and probably sub-micron in a lot of applications, but is this better than, and does it characterize the surface in the way that you actually want it? It also has major implications on functional requirements. So if you're applying maximum material conditions, how do you actually apply them if you're not capturing the maximum and minimum? So with the 3D scanning, obviously you're capturing a lot more data and categorizing the surface as best you can. So even at this feature level on a simple plane, the data gives a really good level of control because you can change the fits and you can, you can take data out if it's deemed to be a piece of dust or dirt, and you can do that all retrospectively without having to remeasure the part, which other methods don't allow. So coming to the next slide. So the other important thing, as well as data density, is looking at sample size. So this, I'd say, is the single most important aspect of precision reverse engineering. So when we undertake a project, we liaise with the customer to understand the level of risk acceptable in not correctly defining the geometry. So every part is going to have some manufacturing variability. What sample size do we need to capture to ensure that we've understood that variability, or at least minimize the risk as much as possible? And this is where the batch or trend analysis comes in GOM. So it gives us the ability to carry out parametric inspection across a large number of the same parts in a fully traceable way, and also generate the sample statistics and identify potential outliers and anomalies. And also, if enough is known about the part, material, and manufacturing, we can also reverse engineer tolerances as well by using statistics and capability metrics to understand what's going on in that manufacturing process. All right. Sorry, I've skipped a slide there, apologies. So within the GOM software, there's also another feature where we can create these statistics within a single part. So for in the example, we have a disk where we have several distances to be measured between faces. Now, obviously, if we're measuring a single slot, we have access to 8 of those distances, so already a good sample size. If we then extrapolate that across the whole part, we've got access to almost 800 measurements. And then if we take that back to the basics about talking about the original sample size, we're talking about the power of over 2.5 million measurements and how statistically that becomes gives you some really robust measurements. And then finally, from the tools within the software point of view, we have the aerofoil analysis, which Leah's touched upon. So a lot of the projects we undertake involve a level or involve some reference to an aerofoil. And using the tools within the GOM software, which are standardized to aerospace companies, provides the key information for reverse engineering as well. So both 2D and 3D information can be generated and analyzed. And then from these, we can create driving dimensions for reverse engineering of models and parts. GOM also provides the ability to have a golden mesh, which has a huge amount of uses. But in many applications, it's a good level of understanding of what that's actually showing you is required. It's not necessarily a tick box, an easy route to get the correct geometry out from a reverse engineering point of view. And then a lot of the projects, or some of the projects we undertake, we need to access internal data. So although GOM do now have a portfolio of CT scanners, it's still not usually suitable for measuring internals, especially on nickel-based alloys. So for this reason, destructive testing or destructive methods to extract the core geometry in this example are still used. So here we'd scan the outside of the blade. From that scan data, we'd create a fixture to hold the part while we carried out an EDM cutting process, wire cutting, and then the parts would be rescanned and realigned into the parent geometry to give us the core geometry in the same alignment as the external form. So 3D, I want to just touch on some kind of developments and other things going forward now within the software and 3D scanning. So 3D CAD data and drawings should be unambiguous, but anyone who works in these on a daily basis will know that that's just not the case. So the designer, manufacturer, and inspector will all have slightly different interpretations of the design, dimensions, and tolerances, which will inevitably lead to variation in the part. And whether this is attributed to manufacturer inspection, it doesn't really matter. It's just this variation which is an issue. So a development that goes some way in solving these problems is the use of product manufacturing information, or model-based definition. where we can directly attribute the dimensions and tolerances to the CAD data. So using the GOM software, this data can be read in directly and inspection plans created in an auto or semi-automated way, let's say. So this goes quite a long way in ensuring nominal values are correct and tolerances are correct, but actually is only half the story. So I think there's still a little way to go before there's a very easy way to translate measurement data in CAD into measurement data in the real world. So if we take a really simple example here, like a linear dimension between two faces, there's at least 11 different ways to measure this, and none of which are ever stated on a drawing and are always open to interpretation. So how do we communicate this on a drawing, and how do we communicate this within the model-based definition? The other thing to consider is the fact we have this high data density. So because the probability of detecting a true maximum or close to true maximum is more likely, then we tend to end up with getting results that maybe don't correlate with other systems, but are usually the upper end of tolerances, or often push parts out of tolerances compared to other systems. So the ISO 1101 is making some progress. So you can see the bottom right, we're looking at having some sort of statistical base measurements to kind of alleviate a bit of this. So if you see the image at the top, you can see on there's clearly some dust and dirt, which is factored into the calculations currently, but actually is probably not a consistent or correct way of doing it. So it's going on it's developing, but it's just being aware that when you're correlating between systems, that you have to kind of compare like for like, and there is variation that exists between these. And then finally, for myself, it's just looking at what potential could happen in the future. From an aero engine point of view, because of the speed of capture is so fast, is there potential for scanning everything and then using live CFD models to actually kit parts, so we're getting optimum performance of every part, or at least modules or things, which isn't unforeseeable. And also looking at full airframes. So as the sensors and technology advance, then is it possible to scan them during manufacture and deliver, say, for instance, customer-based delivery models, or during the MRO process, so looking at dent and buckle reports in an automated way, or repair verifications, or even every time it lands. Who knows? If the scanning technology is developing as fast as it is, then it may even be feasible to scan every aircraft at certain hubs and have a complete history of the airframe movement over time for, looking at deformation or hard landings or bird strikes. So these are a few possibilities and examples, but I'm sure the industry will find its own way. So that's everything from me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. Really appreciate that. It's a great overview of some of the real and practical examples, from reverse engineering through to production measurement and so on. Thanks very much. So, topic of standards, let's say it's extremely highly regulated industry, as the aerospace industry, perhaps as regulated as any out there, and there are various standards and accreditations to meet, and I've seen a few items on the chat that relate to these questions. So first and foremost, like any measurement system, our systems leave the factory with a certificate. This is in line with VDI, VDE standards, and also now we have the 10360-8 as a test that you can do on our automated systems. But what I really wanted to address, I get asked this so many times as I visit potential customers, especially about, can we use 3D scanning for final inspection? Are companies using it for final inspection? Well, yes, there's nothing out there that prohibits the use of this. And it's quite often a common misunderstanding of the technology. So what I wanted to do is just give you a couple of examples about how we fit with the most common standards. And the most relevant, I guess, in the first instance is AS9102. So first article inspection for most of you, perhaps from the industry already, will be very familiar with this. So measuring the first off part, measuring every detail on the drawing, the design definition, a really perfect use for Atos measurement, because it is completely independent, which is what the standard drives. It can give you a 3D complete representation of the product. Also, the data is retrievable over time. You know, the records and retentions are really important for this. And you can always go back to this data, reevaluate it in the future if there's something that you need to do. Those that are from the industry like me will have had no end of experiences of trying to get something remeasured by a CMM, for example, because there was not points taken at the time of the first article. So once you've got the 3D data, as Dan has highlighted, once you've got that data, it really is possible to do whatever you do. First and foremost, obviously, you have to meet the requirements of the design definition. This is normally an inspection report, perhaps based on sections, as you can see, title pages, who did the work, name of the products, tables of the results, different alignments you can see in those color plots is showing different alignments you can form, local best fits. Really, the possibilities are endless, and these can be made into templates, so this can be repeated, it can meet company standards or customer requirements perhaps. So yeah, like I say, it's a really good use of the technology. Also, actually, a couple of questions on the chat around kind of validation or measurement system analysis. So good to bring out that how we fit with AS 13003. This is quite a de facto standard now for the aerospace industry. It's quite common. We see across the supply chain. If it's not this standard, normally it's something very similar, but essentially this is measurement system analysis, sometimes called gauge R&R. And quite simply, we can be evaluated in the same way that you would evaluate something like a CMM. So in the language used within AS 13003, we would be called a computer-driven measurement system. And the test there is a 10 times repeatability study. So measuring the one part 10 times and looking at the variation within that measurement. At the same time, there is a correlation activity. So this is a check to an independent setup. So perhaps in this case, a CMM or another form of measurement, and doing a correlation check. So the first step for us in this process is to evaluate our repeatability study in 3D. What you see from the image on the left there, you see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 through to 10. This is each of the individual measurements carried out as part of our measurement system analysis. And the color in this case represents the range of the results. Okay, so this is, say, the furthest away from one of the other measurements. Okay, so the complete range that you're looking at there. And this is our typical case study, an industrial gas turbine. And the range there you can see is around 3 to 4 microns from the kind of histogram on the right-hand side of the image. So this gives you a feeling for the types of resolution that we are talking about. This particular part is around 300 to 400 millimeters tall. On the right-hand side, if you want to go one step further, you can trigger the capability analysis, which is what we're seeing on the right-hand side. So you can apply a tolerance to this range check, and the software will compute the measurement capability for that particular study. So this, for us, is a really good check. You know, if you're doing something via a tactile method, it's difficult sometimes to understand if it's a misprobe or if it's hit the peak of the radius or something like that. This is a real visual way of doing that. So it gives you confidence when moving to the next step. And the next step, very traditionally in this type of study, is to evaluate based on the characteristics of the drawing. So this table is from the software. It shows points, thicknesses, diameters, radii, and it shows each of the individual deviations from that study. So this time we've aligned it, we've measured to drawing, and we've reported the deviations per measurement there. So this is each of the 10 repeats. And then there's various export techniques that perhaps have to fit with various company standards or something like this to tabulate the results, also to add the correlation result from an independent system and present the result of a measurement system analysis. So, you know, likening 3D technology very much to traditional 2D technologies, this is the way in which we would carry this out. So there's many more standards exist, for sure. There's no way we could do any of that justice in a single WebEx like this. So we've just highlighted the two main ones. What we can say is that we're in a good position in terms of there's not been any sort of procedural or standards, either international or from a customer, that we've not been able to fulfill in some way. And we're doing that. Me personally, I'm a member of the NADCAP committee that looks at the measurement and inspection standards. And as Dan alluded to, this is one way in which the industry has moved quite recently to standardize how this type of technology is looked at, is evaluated, and even audited to ensure best practices are followed, that good metrology is the outcome. And this is standardized and agreed by the committee, which is made up of aerospace prime companies and the supply chain companies as well. Perhaps some of you on the WebEx are members too. Quite simply, this is sorry, gone too far, too quick. This is a 2-day, very careful audit of the production use of a system like this. It goes through a very comprehensive checklist with a trained auditor that evaluates the use of a system like our ATOS systems. In the end, you get a certificate to say that you have achieved the accreditation. From my own point of view, it is a high accreditation standard, but also it's very consistent with what is already out there in way of auditing criteria. We have the hardware and the software controls in place to satisfy the requirements, and accreditation is possible, as Daniel and the team have proved, as well as others now out there for this accreditation. We're ready, we're prepared for this, and we've even published a white paper document on our website which helps people to understand the nuances with the checklist and how to achieve this. So today, we've just touched on a real small element of this. We have a wide range of products to support the customer problems. Predominantly, that's where we've come from. But now very much we're trusted and in mainstream production applications doing final inspection measurement across the globe. And this is really where we are today. What's driving us, as Scott alluded to at the beginning, and also Daniel in his chat, we're really driven by the customer requirements, the customer demands, and this is really what pushes us forward. So right now, you know, we've gone from being used as a development tool to being mainstream production, and now companies are really challenged: what else can we do with that data? It's extremely high resolution, as you've perhaps seen from some of the information we've showed today. And what we're seeing actually is we're kind of crossing that grey area of non-destructive evaluation, like visual inspections and detecting imperfections on the surface, perhaps dents, nicks, scratches, and so on. And we're really at that resolution where we can start to really evaluate this and really standardize and streamline some of the existing more traditional processes for doing these checks as well. So really driven by customer requirements, customer demands, on which is the way in which we are going forward as a company. Okay, that's it for me now. I'm going to pass back to Scott, who will conclude.
Okay, guys, so I'd just like to firstly take this opportunity to give a big thanks to Lee and Dan on this presentation. Also the guys at the IMechE, so the Birmingham Young Members Panel, and Emma and Co helping out with the webinar, without which I wouldn't be reaching out to all of you today. So thanks very much, guys. Okay then, so in summary, we firstly started talking about GOM as a company, who we are, that we've integrated with Zeiss. Secondly, we were talking about the fundamentals of how 3D structured light works. So this takes the reference points, and then we're able to scan and maneuver the sensor all around the part until we've got the adequate scan data. After this, we then talked about how GOM is actually used in aerospace. So we're not just used in the engine manufacturing area, but also like aero structures and space as well by extension. Dan then gives some excellent case studies and talked about how we're actually used in the real world, where we fit in terms of CMMs, because we don't claim to take everything within aerospace. You know, we've certainly got our advantages, and we're able to capitalize on that and help our customers achieve the best production times possible. Then we talked a little bit into standards as well, which is fantastic. So the thing to take away from that is that we're able to meet all of these standards in some way, which is really, really positive news. And then as well, yes, we'll just move on to how you can contact us. So our main website is www.gom.com, but we've got an aerospace specific area, which is gom.com/aero. And for any information on the systems, if you want a demonstration or just interested in the software and the hardware together, please email info-uk@gom.com. I'm also more than happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn as well and fire off any questions in a private message. So without further ado, let's watch this video here of our turbine blade inspection. Or IGT in fact, and I'll start to answer any of your questions. So thanks very much for listening. So, sorry, just bear with me while I get my head around this. Okay, so Zoe's asked, how hard would it be for someone from a chemical engineering background to join the industry? So with all types of engineering, of course, there's many areas of crossover. So what I'll answer firstly is the GOM and metrology area. So with GOM, we completely start from scratch when we complete the training. So there's a 5-day basic training course, or 3 days if you're not doing the automated. So this is absolutely possible to join with the fundamentals of engineering that you I'm sure embarked on with your studies. In terms of aerospace as well, aerospace is a very broad, large area, but I'm sure there'll be no problems trying to join the area from that. Okay, so then we've got the next question as to how do you address measurement traceability?
Yeah, shall I take that one?
Yeah.
So I think maybe we covered this in a little bit of detail in the presentation. But the sensors, the scanners, they come with a certificate. This is a test we do in line with the VDI VDE standard 2634 Part 3, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
And for automated systems, it is now possible for some of our scan boxes that you can do a ISO 10360. There's a Part 8 there now that we can comply to, and as you'd expect, everything in the measurement chain, from the calibration panels to the scale bars, they all come with a traceable certificate as part of the system delivery.
Okay. So next question: when carrying out repeatability studies, does the system display consistency? So we've got a number of things within our software to aid the repeatability studies. It really depends on what the customer wants. Generally, what we do is to create a colour map which would indicate what happens when we compare run 1 to run X, in which we can just look then, what was it at the start of the process and how much do we differ. We've also got things in our software that shows the sigma value, the range value, and also CP, CPK, PP, and PPK values as well. Okay, the next one is, when you relate the measurements back to the scale bar, do they indicate consistency? And if so, do they indicate any detectable bias? So just as a quick introduction as well for those that aren't aware, so the scale bars is what we use as a scale for the reference points when we're doing photogrammetry. So in short, the answer is yes, we do show a scale bar discrepancy. So so this is every time the photogrammetry is run. So if we look inside the properties tab, this gives us our discrepancy inside there. Please get in touch with us if you want a bit of a demonstration on how that works.
Scott, what I would say on that fact is, if you take sort of a blade measurement on a photogrammetry system, small volume, you're talking sub-micron if you've got a good fixture and setup. So yeah, there is discrepancy, but it's almost, it's down in the single micron level if it's set up correctly.
Okay, next question I'm going to hand over to Lee.
Okay, question around QIF. So this is transferring of data like PMI and geometries. I think Dan covered this quite well. The functionality is there, which is developed if your CAD data import has had the application of this onto the geometry. It should import into GOM-INSPEC. This will be able to drive the sensor in automated techniques and also to streamline your inspection processes. I would suggest if you've got it, then to try it. And if it's not working to your needs, contact us and we will look to address this.
Generally, in order, so if we're talking here about operator error, so generally what we'd say in this situation, if it's a vital part that we've got a repeatable process, generally the automated route is generally the preferred route and the suggested route from us. But generally, the sensor, when we do individual scans, the sensor is constantly checking things like movement error, lighting error, or any influences that's going to make or that's going to produce bad data. So we've set some very tight thresholds to reduce the amount of operator error. We've also got many different prompts within our software that will allow that information to be portrayed, and we won't let any bad measurement data in.
Okay. Question around the software algorithms and the validation of these. Yeah, I guess as many metrology softwares have to go through. There's standard protocols and testing that's carried out. We do this with the PTP in Germany and also the NIST tests, and yeah, the software therefore is certified. In terms of MSA analysis and libraries of this, the MSAs are pretty much mainstream in absolutely everything we do, whether it's a single demo or volume production. The MSA is something that we do. This is normally on customer data, so it's not something that we keep a library of. We do have some for demonstrator parts, and if it's a specific interest, I'd ask you to get in touch and we could perhaps talk you through something like this.
Bear with us, guys, we've got a lengthy one here.
Okay, so this question is around multiple sensor positioning and the size of the object. So Scott covered this at the beginning with the use of reference points.
Mm-hmm. So it is possible to let's say to use a large measuring volume. So this is something that we haven't touched upon. So we're able to use different measuring volumes, which will give us certain, let's say, size of area that we can scan. So the larger the area in which we scan, the less points are going to be, or the less resolution that we'll have in certain areas. So this question alludes to, let's use a large measuring area on the majority of the surface and then a smaller one to capture the details. So this is possible by the use of reference points. So this is just taking into account where we are in 3D space, and if we use the same project, we constantly keep monitoring the triangulation, let's say, between the reference points, so we're able to understand where we are in 3D space, which will allow us then to stitch the image back to the correct place in 3D space accurately.
Okay, so I guess the final time, especially that final question, especially given the time for today. If there's any that we've not answered, we'll try and do this individually afterwards, but conscious of everyone's time. Question again around validation of the data when it's received from the equipment to the software. Yeah, this is handled by the software, so the data acquisition combined with the parts of the process, like the scale bars, like the calibration panel, this giving the size, and ultimately, this is a validation check that we would do as part of MSA studies and checking against known standards. Much like any metrology system, the ATOS systems would be used in the same way.
Okay, so that's it for our questions, but like Lee says, if you've got any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. I'd like to thank you all for attending today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.